Welcome everyone to our annual Ventura County Agricultural Resources 101 event. My name is Emily Nye. I'm with the Ventura County Resource Conservation District. Today we'll be highlighting free services and programs for producers offered by organizations throughout Ventura County. By bringing together agricultural producers and these service providers, we hope to achieve two things. We want to share resources and information with producers so that y'all understand our programs and the support that's available to you. And we would like to get feedback from you to know what producers, what programs and services do you need, so that way we want to help our local community. I would want to acknowledge our, I think I went the wrong direction. Okay. We want to acknowledge and thank our sponsors for the event, including Coastwater Solutions and Devil Mountain Wholesale Nursery. Additionally, we want to thank United Water Conservation District for the space and AV assistance. Okay. On the agenda for today, we'll start off with presentations from 4 core agricultural conservation partners, with Q&A after each organization's presentation. Then next we'll have surveys for producers on Zoom and in person to better understand your resource concerns, your priorities. The webinar will then end, and then we'll start our tabling and networking session. We'll have some lunch, informally, and then we'll have our closing remarks and finish collecting those feedback forms. And as a heads up, we have a summary contact sheet. It notes all of the organizations present today. So on Zoom, we'll be emailing this contact sheet to you. And in person, there's a physical copy that you might have picked up at check-in. If you haven't, we'll have extras on the black on the table here. Okay. Our featured presenters today support producers in many numerous ways. Presentations will be starting off with Farm Bureau and VCALG updates, then UCANR advisors and specialists updates, NRCS technical and financial support overview, and then Ventura County RCD grant program overview. Again, after each presentation, there will be 10 minutes of Q&A. So on Zoom, please type your questions in the chat, and then in person, if you could hold your questions until the presentation is complete, and then we'll go around with a mic to those who have raised their hands with questions. And we'll try and address as many online and in-person questions as we can with the allotted time. If your question doesn't get answered, we hope that you follow up with the contacts via your contact sheet and also during our tabling session. All right, I'm going to pass it off to Jody.
Good morning, everybody. So as Emily said, thank you. As Emily said, my name is Jody Schweitzer. I'm the Water Program Director with the Farm Bureau of Ventura County, which means I also manage and oversee the VCALG program, the Ventura County Agricultural Irrigated Lands Group. I'm not going to spend really any time explaining what VCALG is. So if you're a producer in the room, hopefully this is familiar to you. If we're not familiar to you, our booth is right there in the back. So please come talk to us during the tabling session. What I am going to do today is talk about 2 really significant new program requirements under the Ag Order. And my goal in doing that is both to prompt questions. So I'm going to go through it kind of quickly. If anything spurs a question for you, please come talk to us. But also, I really want to underscore how all of the other folks in this room can help support you in meeting some of these compliance obligations. So as you're talking with some of these other entities, keep these requirements in mind and ask about how they can help you with this stuff. So the 2 significant new requirements that I'm talking about are the nitrogen tracking and reporting requirements, which you might be familiar with the terms INMP and INMR. That's the Irrigation Industry Management Plan, and then the report. And then there's the TMDL requirements. These are both requirements that have 4-letter acronyms that I think are pretty confusing still. Another element that helps add to that confusion is that the nitrogen tracking and reporting, or the INMP and INMR requirements, deal with nitrogen, and TMDL requirements, while they can deal with other water quality pollutants or constituents, the first ones that have triggered also all deal with nitrogen. So people are kind of getting hit with these two new requirements, understanding them at the same time. Both deal with nitrogen, both have these four-letter acronyms, really easy to confuse the two. As I said, these are two new requirements under the Ag Order that was adopted in September of 2023. We have a handout at the table that includes all of the requirements under the Ag Order, many of which were just carried forward from previous conditional waivers as this program has grown and evolved over the years, but these are the two big new ones. To help draw some distinction here, the nitrogen tracking and reporting requirements, think about that in terms of source control. So we're trying to quantify how much nitrogen our crops need, how much nitrogen we are applying to the field, and be as good of stewards of that resource as we can be. This applies everywhere across the county. So every grower, these requirements apply to you, and we are tracking and reporting nitrogen. On the other hand, TMDL requirements only apply to growers in specific watersheds, and I'll show some maps at the end of my slides. And they could apply to nitrogen, they could apply to legacy pesticides or current use pesticides or toxicity, bacteria, metals. It's a whole long list of water quality pollutants that TMDLs could apply to. And the goal with TMDLs is about mitigating the runoff from your field. So for the INMP and INMR requirements, we're controlling that nitrogen at the source control. For TMDL requirements, we're focusing on runoff, and we are treating or mitigating the runoff from your fields that may be carrying these pollutants into waterways. So I'll talk a little bit more in detail about both of these requirements. Because I have limited time, I'm going to kind of skip some slides. But again, this is just really to help bring up questions that you have, and then we'll talk in more detail during the tabling session. So INMP, the P stands for plan. This requirement took effect in March 1st of last year. So by March 1st of 2025, everybody should have had an INMP in place for their farm or ranch. And the INMP itself is developed per management unit. So by management unit, you should think it's the same crop. It's located on the same ranch. If we're talking orchards, it's the same age range. So, a 30-year-old mature orchard would be a different management unit than a 3-year-old newly planted orchard. And then you irrigate and fertilize those crops in the same way. There's a pre-planning component. So if we're looking here at the PDF sheet, you kind of pre-plan. So at the beginning of your season, how much nitrogen do you anticipate applying? And then there's an actuals column where you kind of true up at either the end of the year for perennial crops or the end of the season for annual crops. These have to be certified. So you can certify them by attending the 6-hour training program that VCALG puts on in partnership with CDFA's Fertilizer Research and Education Program. And then you take a test afterwards, and then you can certify your own plan. Or you can work with NRCS, or you can work with a certified crop advisor. And again, they were due March 1st of last year. We also have an Excel version of this same plan template. So you don't have to use the PDF. If you have multiple crops over multiple ranches, that would result in dozens of pages of paperwork. Much easier to use an Excel spreadsheet where you can, transpose information, connect it with other tracking programs that you may have, whatnot. A little bit more dynamic and flexible. For perennial crops, you develop your plan on the calendar year. For annual crops, you develop your plan on the crop cycle. So, and these plans have to be updated every year. So you had your first plan last March. By this just past March 1st, you would have updated your plan for 2026. Then we've got the report. So you do your plan, and then there's the report. The report is going to lag the plan by a 1-year period. So the first report was just due this past March 1st. Because it was the first year, we requested the regional board extend a 1 month grace period for submittal of those INMRs. So that ended at the end of March. Hopefully everybody got their INMRs in. I'll talk a little bit about what the next steps on those are in just a second. But what the INMRs are is it's taking over summary information from your INMP and it is reporting it into Clearwater. So your total nitrogen applied, your harvest yield, and then your irrigation and nutrient management practices. It gets submitted to VCALG, we anonymize the data, and then we report it to the regional board. If you have a perennial crop, you would have been reporting on all of the previous calendar year, so calendar year 2025, January 1st through December 31st. And if you had an annual crop, you would have reported on all crop cycles that were complete, that were established after March 1st and completed before December 31st. So every crop cycle that fit within March 1st through the end of the year. If you had a crop that was planted last year, sometime in 2025, but didn't complete the final harvest by the end of the year, then you'd hold on to that for the next reporting period. And we have a whole flow chart to help with that decision-making process. So what are we going to do with that, all that data that we just collected? There's two things that we do with it. First, we develop groundwater protective formulas, values, and targets. And what this is looking at is it's looking at the data that's aggregated at a basin level. And then we will take that nitrogen application and harvest yield removal data, and we will use that to inform formulas that might be correlating kind of what we're seeing in loading on the ground to what the groundwater conditions underlying that land is looking like. And then develop values for if there is ramp down that would be needed in order to achieve drinking water standards in those basins. We're going to be looking at nitrogen applied, nitrogen removed, recharge conditions, so hydrologic conditions of those basins, and any other factor that's relevant. This formula was originally due this fall. VCALC has requested an extension of this because we want some more time to evaluate the data and also to see how some statewide policy discussions that are happening right now, how they play out before we commit to an actual process. One thing I do want to note with this slide here is that groundwater in our county looks really good. So you'll note anything in blue is an icon that means those nitrate as nitrogen levels are either non-detect or up to 2 milligrams per liter. The level we're looking at is 10. 10 is the drinking water standard. So anything under 10, great. So anything in blue, green, or yellow is under 10. As you can see, the majority of the wells that we are tracking are meeting those drinking water standards. Anything in orange is between 10 and 25, so slightly above drinking water standards. And then anything in red would be above 25, and we don't have any of those. So this is painting a really good picture of groundwater conditions in Ventura County. We clearly want it to stay that way, but groundwater challenges that exist in other parts of the state don't exist here. I'm going to skip over this. Next would be statistical outliers. So we will take the data, we will compare the data you've reported to what other growers of your same commodity type have also reported. Everybody will be assigned an A value and an R value per crop. And those are kind of your metrics that would be plugged into this statistical outlier analysis. So to say, if you are a lemon grower, are you applying significantly more nitrogen per unit of harvest yield than other lemon growers? If you would, or if you were, then you would receive some additional education. So you would have to go to 2 hours per year of nitrogen and fertilizer management specific education. You would have to indicate that you are an outlier on subsequent INMRs, and then provide any additional context where needed. One thing that being an outlier is it's not a violation, it doesn't carry a penalty. It's really focused on how can we bring education and resources to people who might benefit from that. So what's next? We've got a whole bunch of resources on our website. This is a QR code to our most recent newsletter, which has all these resources in it as well. But as I mentioned, the deadline just passed for submitting your first INMR. So if you haven't done it yet, please do it now because it's better late than never. But we have just recently sent emails to folks whose data might be well outside of an expected range to ask those people to review their calculations, make corrections if needed. So if you already submitted your INMR and you didn't get that email, great, your data looks good. If you did get that email, please just take a look at your data, redo your calculations, and if you need any help, contact VCALG. So I'll go over the TMDL stuff pretty quickly. Again, this is really just trying to prompt questions. I'm going to define a TMDL really quick for everybody. So what this is, it's essentially a water quality budget for an impaired water body. So if you have a stream that is listed as impaired for legacy pesticides, then what the regional board does is they look to see what are the potential sources of legacy pesticides. So they might be coming from agriculture, they may be coming from municipal stormwater systems, they may be coming from open space, other sources. Each of those sources would be assigned a load allocation that they are allowed to contribute that would still ensure that this water body then meets its water quality objectives. So that load allocation sets the maximum amount that land use is allowed to contribute. So when agriculture gets a load allocation of legacy pesticides, that's the cap that at any of the VCALG monitoring sites that could be detected. And then the regional board incorporates these TMDLs into the ag order, and that's how they are enforced. And as I mentioned, compliance is evaluated at VCALG's representative monitoring sites. So this is a map right here. I've got a version of this at our table. It shows each of our monitoring sites, and it also shows all of the responsibility areas that surround those monitoring sites. So the way that this evaluation process works is we look to see what the water quality is looking like at these monitoring sites. If there is an exceedance, that exceedance then is considered to be representative of all of the land within that responsibility area. So what happens when there is a TMDL exceedance at one of those monitoring sites? It means that all of the growers in that encompassing responsibility area are then subject to discharge limitations for that constituent or pollutant. So if it's nitrate, that's going to be what you have a discharge limitation for. If it's toxaphene or selenium, that's what the discharge limitation would be for. And then once that applies to your farm or ranch, you get a notification from VCALG, and you have 2 months to select your compliance track. You can go track 1, which means you sample at the edge of your farm or ranch, and you say, I'm going to sample for nitrate, and I'm going to see if I am meeting this load allocation. If so, you report that to the regional board. Great, you're in compliance. If you exceed that, that is a result that then is publicly reported to the regional board. You have to mitigate it, or it could result in enforcement. The alternative compliance track is track 2. This is what the Farm Bureau had proposed and advocated for. This is an implementation track. So instead of sampling, you're going to work with technical service providers, like a lot of the folks in this room. They're going to make recommendations for on-farm mitigations that would reduce the discharge of this constituent. And then they're going to put that together in a management practice plan. You submit that to the regional board, they approve it, you implement the plan, and you're in compliance. My last slide here is just a map of where we have had these TMDL triggers so far. So everywhere you see in red, this is an area that has exceeded for 1 or more TMDL constituents. Nitrate was in all of these except for McGrath Lake. This one was for legacy pesticides. Everything else was for nitrate and then potentially other 1 additional constituent. These folks were all notified either at the end of 2024 or February of 2025 and are working through those compliance pathways. But VCALG continues to monitor, and we will continue to have exceedances at additional sites. So how this process works is when VCALG gets our lab results back from the lab, we compare it to these load allocations, and where we have an exceedance, we then have to report that to the regional board. The regional board then reviews that exceedance. And if there's any extenuating circumstances that we might be able to provide to say, we don't think this should trigger because anomalous rain conditions or some other factor that might be pointing to, we think this is coming from a different source and not agriculture, whatever it may be, we're going to qualify that to the regional board. If there's laboratory QC issues, we'll qualify that and ask them not to trigger these results. So we have a couple different categories. We have one category of exceedances that we have already reported to the regional board that they are reviewing and that we expect them to confirm. And then we have another category of exceedances that we have reported to the regional board that they are also reviewing that we've asked them not to confirm. So the areas in orange here are where we have exceedances that the regional board has received, and we expect them to confirm these exceedances. So if you operate in one of these areas in orange, and some of them overlie the red areas, it just means there's a new exceedance, then this is something that is going to be coming to you soon. So I'll make sure it's on your radar. These areas in yellow are areas that have also exceeded for bacteria or nutrient or legacy pesticides, where there has been some extenuating circumstance that we have asked the regional board not to confirm those exceedances. So we're hopeful that they will not confirm, at least for the time being, for these areas. The one area in gray up here, we were able to provide documentation and the regional board did not confirm that exceedance. So that was good. We were able to avoid triggering these requirements for folks in the upper Ojai area. I've got this map on the back table. Please grab a copy. It's got all your monitoring sites and responsibility areas, and I can answer any questions you have then. Okay. Do we have time for questions? Yeah. You want to spread this? Okay.
So for the Q&A, make sure that if you're asking a question from the audience, you wait until Alex, raise your hand. Alex comes over to you with the microphone and you speak into the microphone. Okay, thank you.
Okay, this is more of a public service announcement than anything else, but if you don't know what she just said, it's really, really important. There are fees that can be up to $5,000 a day for not complying with this program. So you need to know this. You should know this if you're a grower in this area. And if you don't, you're already out of compliance and you should be talking to Jody immediately after this. It's super duper important. And I'm bringing this up because I still talk to many farmers every day that don't know what she just talked about. So if you don't, you got to do it. It's not a choice. It's regulatory. You have to do it.
Thanks. Thanks for the PSA, Lisa. Yeah, me and Danielle in the back of the room are a resource to you guys all the time. So please, while we are unfortunately not a free resource, if you're a grower, you know you pay into this program, we are still your resource. So please use us. Any other questions? Kevin.
So you mentioned if you submit your INMR and you don't hear anything, you're good. Is it same for the MPP if you're on track 2 on the exceedance?
Great question. So the submittal process for the INMR and MPP are a little bit different. INMR, that's your nitrogen tracking and reporting, that gets submitted to VCALG. We are QCing your data and then we anonymize it and then we send it to the regional board. So if you didn't hear from us as to any QC flags, you're good. For the MPP, which means you've chosen track 2 under the TMDL requirements, that doesn't get submitted to VCALG, or VCALG gets copied on it. It gets submitted directly to the regional board. So you send it either electronically or via mail to the regional board. You copy VCALG, so we have a copy, but we are not the reviewer or approver of those plans. That is strictly a regional board action. That's how they design the regulatory framework. So they will review it and then they will get back to you with either an approval, a conditional approval, or a request for revisions. I anticipate their review process to be lengthy. They are a limited staff. If it takes 6 months or more, I would not be the least bit surprised by that. So as long as you've submitted it, you've gotten your confirmation email to say, from the regional board to say we've received it. You're done. You just sit back and hold tight and wait. If you didn't get an email to say that they've received it, I would email them again. You want to have that receipt to say it's been submitted, they got it, now the ball's in their court and you're just waiting.
Okay, speaking about tracks, Jody, I know you worked extraordinarily hard to get track 2 to be an option. We were super lucky to do that. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you don't choose anything, it defaults to track 1, and you do not want that. You want track 2, otherwise you're going to be paying a lot of money in lab fees for testing your water, correct?
That's kind of correct. We don't give recommendations to folks to say like, is track 1 or track 2 better? Because it's really going to be dependent on your operation. It's going to depend on, do you have tailwater or do you only have stormwater runoff, the constituent. So I'm sure there are some orchards who only have stormwater runoff. They might be able to sample for nitrate and meet those levels if you're looking for under 10. One thing I always recommend to people to do is you can do educational sampling. So if your area is orange right now and you think these requirements are coming, you can sample. I think it costs, I don't know, maybe $200, Fruit Growers Lab or other labs for a nitrate analysis. It's pretty much more cost effective than other lab analyses. Do some educational sampling so that you can get a better feel for like, if I sample the edge of my field, can I demonstrate compliance? One of the biggest reasons we advocated for track 2 is because there are other areas and other constituents that would be incredibly hard to comply with through track 1. If you're in an area subject to legacy pesticide TMDL, which the entire Cayugas Creek area, so all of the Oxford Plains, Moore Park, Simi Valley, the whole area, the load allocation for legacy pesticides is below what a laboratory can detect. So we are talking parts per trillion, and these are chemicals that are persistent in the environment, long half-lives, they break down over a long period of time. You're not applying it anymore. You have very little control over what is leaving your field. It binds to sediment. If you sample at the edge of your field in a rain event for legacy pesticides, you're likely going to trigger it everywhere. So we really wanted to make sure that there was a compliance pathway that would set growers up for success, but also that would be taking steps to be as protective of the environment as we can practically do. So, if you can mitigate to the extent practicable for these constituents, that should be the standard rather than meeting these incredibly low thresholds that are effectively impossible.
And are you able to change your mind?
No, yeah. We have like a 2-hour long workshop on TMDL, so we can go to all these details then too. We've got it recorded if anybody wants to see it. But no, once you have locked into a track, you are locked into that track. So you can't choose track 1, sample, be like, oh, I can't meet these load allocations, and then switch to track 2. And if you don't make a selection, you automatically default into track 1. So it's important to, stay involved with VCALG. When you get a notification from us, ask questions. We can help you make the most informed decision possible. And I think I might be, am I out of time, Coco? Okay, go ahead. Bruce.
Hi, Jody. I'm a relatively small grower of avocados, and I've done my best to try and comply with these 2 programs. But to be honest, they're not on my mind day to day.
Yeah.
And it would be helpful if I had a checklist of what I need to do going forward.
Yeah.
So I don't forget something.
Yeah.
And I miss your email when it comes.
So good news for you. One thing we will have soon, and I haven't talked about Clearwater, which is the online portal that Provost and Pritchard, who Chris is here from PNP right now, also a TSP folks can talk to, is developing for us or has developed, and we're continuing to build and grow this. We are building a compliance dashboard that when you log in, it'll be like your one snapshot of what applies to me. Am I in compliance with these? Color coded, so it sticks out in red. You know that there's something that you need to do. That will be launched in just a couple of months. And then in the Agritech Fair that we have on September, Danielle, can you remind me, 22nd? Agritech Fair? September 22nd, mark your calendars, Agritech Fair. I'll be going through that, demoing it, rolling it out for everybody. We'll probably roll it out before then as well via email, but I'll do a whole demonstration on it. So I think that'll be a really helpful resource to people to be like, just show me what I have to do. You'll log in, it'll show you what you have to do.
What's that called again?
Clearwater? Yep. So the question was, what email do we send out to use? We have two different kind of like email communication methods. One is like our general VCALG newsletter. And we have an email list for that. If you're enrolled in VCALG, if your email address is in Clearwater, you're on that list. If there's specific communications we need to send out to people to say like, you haven't done your INMR yet, or you've got this TMDL exceedance, whatnot, those go through Clearwater. Those comes through no reply at clearwater.org, I believe. They'll have the Clearwater logo. That just means like there's some requirement that's specific to you that's outstanding. Log into your Clearwater account, take a look at this. Yeah, so if you're not getting those emails, make sure that your email address is updated in your Clearwater account. So log into your Clearwater account, you can add multiple email addresses too if you want this to go to multiple people. If you don't have your Clearwater login credentials, just ask us.
Jody, real quick, we have one question from the chat. I got an email with QC flags IHU. Does it mean I'm not in compliance?
It doesn't mean you're not in compliance. So you've submitted your INMR. It means there's something about the data that you included in your INMR that is well outside of a normal range. You're going to want to correct that so that you're not flagged as an outlier or skew any of the other data that gets reported to the regional board. The correct yield units. Yeah. Yeah. So the email itself should define like what your QC flag was and then just tell you, log in, here's what to check. And if you have questions, just send us an email or give us a call. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, my name's Ben Faber. I'm a representative of the University of California Cooperative Extension, Ag and Natural Resources. We started in Ventura, Santa Barbara counties in 1914, not 2000, 1914. Gosh, nobody's around since then. Anyway, we are a band of advisors that cover water relations, nurseries, avocados, citrus, vegetables, strawberries, and we're locally intrigued by what is going on in these counties, coastal counties. From a research standpoint, what are the diseases and pests, and how do you better farm? We also have an urban advisor who does urban farming. But we're also the link to the University of California, Riverside, Davis, Berkeley, as well as Cal Poly's, as well as institutions around the world. So if issues come up, such as invasive pests, we know where to go. We're essentially librarians in a way, kind of figuring out where the archives are and digging stuff out. So with that, I'll turn it over to, So our mission is to support the long-term sustainability of agriculture and natural resources. We're also the home of the Master Gardeners and 4-H, which are incredible institutions within our canopy. So we develop science-based solutions to challenges in fruit and vegetable production, and also environmental issues. So we work with Resource Conservation District. We work with Natural Resources Conservation Service. We work with local providers of information that affect growing and the environment. So, so we do offer insect identification, plant pathology identification, field diagnostics for pests and diseases. Andre Biscaro has just developed an irrigation calculator for avocados for this area, as well as linking it to veg and strawberry irrigation calculators. And we have an extension research program. We had the farm at Faulkner Farm in Santa Paula. We've since moved the Hanson Research and Extension Center to Beardsley Road, which is in Camarillo, which is a site where we do a lot of testing of new ideas and innovations. So here's the Hanson Center, and this is a trial that we did with a variety of cover crops that are appropriate for Ventura, Santa Barbara, and the coastal areas. So here we go. Here's Hamatal Cohen.
Hi, good morning. My name is Hamatal Cohen, and I am an entomologist with UC Cooperative Extension. I work on insect problems in crops like avocado, citrus, and berries. I only have about a minute, so I'm going to give you a quick snapshot of some projects. In avocado, we have a really exciting project monitoring avocado thrips for resistance to abamectin. We have a project that is evaluating hedgerows and their impacts on natural enemies and pollinators. And this summer, fall, we're going to be launching a trial for avocado lacebug to compare organic control options. I have projects in berries and vegetable row crops as well. In berries, we work closely with the Strawberry Center. We're evaluating lygus and spider mites for pesticide resistance. We might be starting a project looking at sterile insect releases for spotted-winged Drosophila. And then in crops like cabbage, we've been working on diamondback moth and other pests as well. Okay, Ben.
So I'm working on a variety of subtropical crops, but also specifically on avocado and citrus, which are crops that are most appropriate for this environment. Unfortunately, it looks like avocados are spreading into the Central Valley. So there's plantings that have gone into the area around Visalia and Stockton. So we are no longer going to be having a corner on avocados along the coast here. But we've been looking at extensive root rot, how to control root rot. And we finally have developed procedures for this ghastly disease that has affected avocados worldwide. We're looking at just basic horticultural practices for improving avocado production in this area. New varieties. We've got trials that have been looking at cocoa and cherimoyas and coffee. We developed coffee production practices back in 1998. And since then, it's spread to small little growers up and down the coast. So one of the questions that came up when people registered was, what's the difference in the avocado nitrogen practices between an organic and a conventional avocado growing practice? And the avocados are amazing. They develop this layer of leaves that slowly break down over time and release nutrients. And so effectively an avocado grower is like managing a parent to a little kid. You feed a lot of nitrogen going up and frequently in more and more massive amounts until if you keep feeding it just gets to be a fat tree. So you back off on your nitrogen. And the thing about avocado organic growers is they forget about feeding that early period. So you'll often see young trees that are kind of yellow. And that means they're just being underfed. And it's really characteristic of a lot of organic growers is that it's expensive, so they hold back. But you really need to feed into that teenage period and then you can cut back. So that's the sort of questions that I work with.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Andre Vizcarra, and I work for UC Extension as an irrigation and water resource advisor. That's my title. And the disciplines I work are basically irrigation and nutrient management. That includes salinity management too. The main crops I work with are berry and vegetable crops, but I'm expanding a little bit to avocados and maybe to different crops coming up soon. So my projects are designed to create information that helps growers to be more efficient with using water and fertilizers. So examples of that are nitrogen uptake curves, nitrogen removal coefficients, for example, that you use when you, the original board we use to calculate how much nitrogen leaves your field once you do the irrigation nitrogen management report, you report the yield, right? So that regional board will, or VCALG actually, will use the coefficient to calculate how much nitrogen comes out of your field. So that's like on the nitrogen side. For example, what you see in the middle picture here is a nitrogen rate trial for celery that's going on right now. This picture was taken on Tuesday when we did the first fertigation. So we first created the nitrogen uptake curve to have a better understanding of how much and when these crops are using the nitrogen. And then we set up trials with rates of different fertilizers and different rates and assess what gives us the maximum yield with the least amount of leaching, meaning the optimum rates, right? So we've done that with strawberries. We're doing that with celery right now and with different crops later on. So other projects too are in terms of assessing different irrigation methods. For example, the picture you see in the bottom for establishing strawberries. So this region uses a lot of water when during the strawberry planting season. That's because most of the water is lost through evaporation, deep percolation, right? Doesn't reach the planting hole, or most of it doesn't. So we're looking into this in addition to different pre-plant fertilization methods. We're going away from the banded fertilization to the broadcast fertilization before bedding up, and also with no pre-plant fertilization. All that based on a comprehensive assessment of the soil analysis. So in addition to that, salinity also is something that I work on a constant basis. So because of time, I'll just stop here and answer any questions later on. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. So my name is Oleg Dogovich. I'm a farmer advisor for vegetables and berry crops. And we always tackle some problems here. They never go away. Complicated ones like this when the plants are dying. And so, we're looking at stresses. We have warm winters, salty water. We have pathogens. We want to see how those things interact. We want to learn and provide information. So we always want to learn and share what we find out. This is one example, a project we just finished. Same with celery, it's our biggest vegetable crop. We have issues, you go around, you see yellow celery, it's probably infested with Fusarium race 4, really tough pathogen. You could see it kills susceptible varieties on the left, there's nothing left. The wind blows away the dry celery, it's done. We have some variety trials over the years that identified something that works and can grow in the presence of this pathogen, like you see on the right. Same goes for cilantro, we're looking at it too, because disease goes both to cilantro and celery. We're doing some weird stuff with steaming soil instead of using fumigants. And now they have machines. They're going to be coming here this summer. New machines that are going to disinfect soil with steam. Are they going to be economical? We'll find out. They say it might work. We're interested in everything. Everything we can do and learn and share with you guys, that's what we want to do. You can see it's very effective. On the top, all the strawberry plants died in infested field. Nothing to harvest there. Saves you a lot of labor. And steam plants, yeah, they did really well. So something we're looking at as well, how to make it economical. I was yesterday talking to a bunch of school kids, and school kids just like us, they throw away a bunch of food. And so now they put in these dehydrator units, they generate dehydrated waste. And that stuff is great for agriculture. You could throw stuff in this machine 2 days later, it looks like a peat moss. And we use this as a carbon source for disinfestation in soil, anaerobic disinfestation of soil that works really well. We're just finishing the study, and this stuff is both fertilizer and disinfectant, and it's organic. So we're gonna get more of this stuff generated because we have a lot of people here. That's one thing we have a lot of here is people throwing stuff away. 20 million tons of food waste we can use in our strawberries, hopefully, one day. We're looking at pests. Hamutal talking about brassica crops, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, and so on. We have this horrible pest. We're looking at weeds, pepper weevil. We're going to do a couple projects on pepper weevil. It destroys our peppers. It's, you put so much money into growing this stuff, and it comes there and just, you have to throw every pepper away that's infested. I think that's where I'm going to stop. It never ends, really. So I'll ask Emma to come here and talk about more problems that she has and you have.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Volk. I am the Nursery and Floriculture Advisor for Cooperative Extension. I'm just going to go over some of the services and research that I work on in my program. So one of the things that we offer are irrigation workshops for nurseries. So we can come onto your farm. We'll provide, scientific background as to why different, efficient irrigation practices, can help you save water. And then we can also provide tailored consultation to help improve your irrigation efficiency. I also, provide one-on-one consultations. My card is on our table back there. So if you want to get in touch with me, my email and cell phone number are on that card. If you have any questions, I also can provide free disease testing through a UC Davis lab. So if you have any sort of diseases that are, root problems or whatever it might be, and you want to get some detailed answers as to what you're dealing with, that is an service that I provide. And then I also conduct a bunch of different research. Some of the research that I'm focusing on is developing application nutrition application recommendations for vegetable transplants. Spoiler alert, 200 parts per million seems to be the best application for most of the vegetables that we're looking at. I also look at integrated pest management for Western flower thrips control in greenhouse production. And then I'm also doing a study looking at aloe and agave mite control. So I kind of, span the gambit whenever it comes to, vegetable transplants to ornamental nurseries to also cut flower production. And this next slide, unfortunately, is irrelevant because this date has already passed. I mixed up the date of these meetings. But I have a quarterly nursery and floriculture meeting that I host in collaboration with community partners. So this is primarily focused on bringing the nursery and floriculture industry together to talk about, issues that y'all are facing, help extend, results from the research that we're conducting to the people that it's relevant to. Our last meeting, we had Jody Switzer come and talk, so she gave a more in-depth presentation compared to the one that she gave today, talking about the INMP, and then we're going to have another meeting up in Santa Barbara County in August, but we oscillate between Ventura and Santa Barbara counties for this meeting. We provide free lunch, free attendance, so come through and, you might learn a thing or two, or I might learn something from you. So I'm going to let Lee come up. She's our new food systems advisor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lee Schmidt, and I am the newest advisor at the UC Cooperative Extension Ventura. I am food systems advisor, and I cover Ventura County and Los Angeles County. And essentially what I'm interested in doing with my program is to support farmers with having sustainable businesses, but then also looking at how we can get more locally grown, fresh, nutritious food to local consumers. And so I actually have a survey at the back of the room on our table that I'd really appreciate people filling out. It is looking at local and regional marketing channels and also climate resiliency on farms. And I have a $40 gift card raffle. So if you fill out that survey, you can get entered into that raffle. And then I also wanted to talk about, there's an additional survey on the back with the Sustainable Ag Lands Conservation Program, which is a countywide grant that is happening right now that is looking at a lot of kind of Ventura County specific sustainable agriculture. And so there's a raffle for that survey as well. And I will also be at the back table. So if anyone has any questions or want to talk to me about your farm's marketing or business admin or policy or anything related to your farm, I will be at the back table. Thank you.
We have time for maybe 3 questions online and in person.
Any questions about what we do at Cooperative Extension? No, we'll all be available in the back left corner to chat with you.
We have one question from online real quick. Can the newest provider provide her name and contact?
Yes, my name is Lee Schmidt, and my email is lschmidt@ucanr.edu.
Right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jordan Atmore. I work for the NRCS, also known as the Natural Resources Conservation Service. We basically exist to provide or help farmers and ranchers like yourselves conserve your natural resources. I'm here today to give you a little spiel about what we do and the services and the assistance that we provide. On a day-to-day basis, basically what I do is get a call or an email from someone like you that is interested in conserving some kind of resource on their property. Usually they already have an idea in mind, like maybe they heard from a neighbor or a friend about some soil moisture sensors that can help them dial in their irrigation water management. We say, yeah, that's something we help out with. And that begins a dialogue between us and the farmer or the rancher of, what their operation is, whether or what crop it is, or whether it's some livestock animal, and what practices that they're doing within their operation that are already treating resource concerns or that might be contributing to resource concern that needs addressing. So we start off with some field visits. It might be a couple field visits where we bring out some specialists, agronomists, biologists, engineers, foresters, grazing management specialists, soil scientists, to help make an inventory and assess the resource concerns that are on the property. And then we are trying to develop a conservation plan that addresses these resource concerns. These include soil erosion and health, water, which includes irrigation efficiency and management, water quality, trying to reduce runoff, minimize runoff and deep leaching to keep less impaired surface water and groundwater. Air quality, plant productivity, and vegetation composition in forest lands and grazing lands, fuel management as well in forest lands, trying to reduce the risk of fire, animals, wildlife habitat as well, and then pump efficiency with energy, as well as just like your overall efficiency with your with the entire operation. Some of the practices that go into addressing those resource concerns include irrigation systems, irrigation water management with those soil moisture sensors I mentioned earlier, nutrient management and soil testing to address water and soil quality, cover crop, mulching and compost are more soil health practices, buffer strips to reduce the amount of impaired water that is leaving your property, windbreaks for plant health and productivity, hedgerows for wildlife habitat, and then structures for erosion control, sediment basins, lined waterways, underground outlets. Things are going to outlet water safely and reduce the impacts of erosion. In forest land and grazing land settings, we're trying to improve grazing management by distributing water and the livestock more efficiently. That includes livestock pipelines, fencing, troughs, tanks, also vegetative practices to improve the composition of the vegetation on the landscape, herbaceous weed treatments, brush management, and then planting practices to try and bring back naturalized or native plants to the vegetation or to the landscape. Forest stand improvement is the same kind of thing, but in a forest, and then fuel management, again, reduce that risk of fire. And then wildlife structures, whether that be artificial or vegetative structures to improve wildlife habitat. All of that just goes into that conservation plan I talked about earlier, and then you can try to apply for funding for financial assistance through our programs that I have listed here. These are the three ones that we work with. ACEP is more at the state level. It stands for Agricultural Conservation easement program. So that's for if you have a piece of property that you want to put in easements, we do have some possible assistance there. But what I work with mostly on a day-to-day basis is EQIP and CSP, the Environmental Quality Incentives Program and Conservation Stewardship Program. Those practices that I just listed on the slide before, that's where these practices live in these programs. EQIP is kind of the flagship. That's where most of our financial assistance goes to, and most people are applying to EQIP. That can be like a 1 or a multiple year contract if you get selected for funding. It really just depends on how many practices, what the practices are, and how long they take to implement. The Conservation Stewardship Program is more for folks who are already doing a good job of conserving their natural resources. It's a 5-year program, and you can do the same practices that you do in EQIP, but then you also get these annual payments each year for continuing to maintain your current stewardship threshold. So when we meet with you, we make a baseline of what your stewardship threshold is, and as long as you maintain that throughout the contract, you're going to receive these annual payments, which right now is about $4,000 a year. So over the contract, you're going to get at least $20,000 for just continuing to do what you do. So this is kind of just a snapshot of everything I just kind of talked about. We start with that planning process where we have field visits and kind of have a dialogue and talk about what can be done and what we can help with, which leads to the want for an application to apply for funding. We go through an eligibility period where we just first find out if you're eligible for these programs and then kind of get your USDA record to a point where you're able to apply for NRCS programs or Farm Service Agency programs or other USDA agencies. There's like a cycle through each year where we have our funding cycle, at which point we'll submit these projects for ranking that we developed a conservation plan based off of. Some weeks later, a month later, we get some selections and we let the people know who are selected for funding that they've got selected, and then we move into this implementation stage where we start implementing those conservation practices to address the natural resource concerns on your property. What we're always looking for is improvements on how to deliver this program, but as well as kind of like how Emily talked about earlier, we want to know what the priority resource concerns are in your guys' eyes, as well as what practices are going to go to treat those resource concerns best. And that's what I got today. If you guys have any questions. Online. We do have funds available for small growers as well. We don't discriminate on any size of operation or type of operation. So it doesn't matter if it's a half acre or 200 acres or a quarter acre or something like that. We've got all types of grants or nothing we do is grants in our organization. It's all like incentive programs. So it's an incentive for you to do a good job. And then we kind of give reimbursements based on that. But we have stuff for irrigation. Solar, we really only have for livestock pumps right now. We don't really have anything for large irrigation system solar. But we do have lots of stuff for cattle operations as well. We've had a big interest in the livestock virtual collars lately, virtual fencing. Those are pretty cool because they're not only just a virtual fence, but they're also a GPS unit for the animal. I think some of them have like some heartbeat monitors and kind of give you some information, and they also give you some notifications if the unit has stopped moving, so whether there's a problem with the unit or with the animal. So and then we do offer sometimes some programs for disaster relief, but a lot of it funnels towards the Farm Service Agency. They have some really good programs for emergency relief in times of need. Any questions? All right.
All right. A little bit about the Ventura County Resource Conservation District. We are a non-regulatory special district in the state of California. We collaborate with landowners, government agencies, essentially any willing partner to facilitate conservation and restoration of our natural resources in the county. We have many strategic priorities. Those include water resources, fire preparedness, soil and climate resilience, invasive and resistant species, land resource management, wildlife habitat, education and outreach. I can go on. So our work is dependent on grant funding, and we go after funding based on what the community expresses as a need. And so that way we can offer assistance that's tailored to the actual needs of the community. And we have several coworkers here today that are going to talk about the programs that we are currently offering. Some of them are actively open and we're accepting applications to work with farmers, and others we are currently working with farmers. They're closed to new applications, but we want to continue getting that kind of funding in the future. So John.
Hi, everyone. My name is John Agustin Sekwa. So I'm part of the water resource team here at the RCD. And one of the main things that we do here on the water resource team is do irrigation evaluations. It's one of the ways I like to describe it as a gateway to a lot of our different grants that we have and different opportunities. Just because we get to see your irrigation system, we also get to, like, in a sense, also evaluate the farm a little bit just to see what type of system you guys are running and just try to see where we guys can help you with all our different resources. So we work with a lot of different farms for evaluations. We can do drip, furrow, sprinklers, pretty much anything you can think of. We try to offer that evaluation for. And if for some reason we can't do it, we'll guide you to the right appropriate agency. But the first grant I really want to talk about is going to be the Agricultural Environmental Water Quality Assistance Grant, AQUA. So what this grant does, it pays 60% of on-farm improvements to improve groundwater quality. So what we're trying to do is reduce like fertilizers and all these chemicals leaching into our groundwater. And in a sense, we offer farmers that 60% reimbursement to buy things such as filters, new pressure regulators, new pressure compensating sprinklers, just a bunch of different components that you can think of, or anything that we can relate towards reducing, improving groundwater quality. We'll cover that. The next grant we have is going to be the interactive irrigation management to reduce the leaching of nitrogen, or what we call iMerlin 2. So what this grant does, it's another grant to help improve groundwater quality. We're trying to reduce like leaching occurring. So what we do is we install these stations on your farm. These stations include soil moisture sensors, an atmometer, lysimeters, and we track all these different chemicals on your farm, your irrigation scheduling, the water penetrating into the ground. And we try to like help you understand, like, hey, you're using too much fertilizer, you're not using enough, or just try to mitigate all that components. That grant is open. It was previously closed, but we do have 10 new spots. So if you're really interested in this grant, which I really like, we have some flyers up here. We can install them in pretty much any commodity, any crop. We have grapes, avocados, citrus, strawberry, whatever you can think of, we can apply it in. But I'm going to pass it on to Alex to talk about our next two grants.
All right. Thank you for the intro, John. So like you mentioned, my name is Alexander. I also work as part of the water resources team here at the RCD. And I'll be going over these two grants here briefly. So our first one here, we call it AMP. It's the Agricultural Management Practice Plan. What this grant aims to do is provide those plans that kind of work in conjunction with what Jody was saying earlier. What we do is we go out to your field, we we look for any areas of improvements, like where pollutants are possibly entering the waterways and watershed. And what we do is we recommend any best management practices to implement on your farm to help mitigate any impacts that could be contributing towards that ag order in place and TMDLs. The next grant here that I'll go over briefly is called CAPG. This grant also aims to provide plans for farmers for free. But this plan's a little different. This is more so revolving around carbon sequestration, kind of sequestering that atmospheric carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and putting that into the soil to make more healthier soil on your orchards and ranches. And that's also kind of done through implementing best management practices that overlap a lot with the practices we recommend on AMP. And yeah, that's my thing.
All right. Some additional grants that we have. First one is the California Underserved and Small Producers Program. It's a extreme weather relief in particular. And so this grant program can award up to $20,000 for approved extreme weather related losses and expenses incurred on your operation. An extreme weather event could be like a wildfire or a flooding event or extreme heat, extreme wind, drought. That one is super competitive, so reach out if you're interested. Another grant we have in partnership with Kachuma RCD, who's in Santa Barbara County, and Community Environmental Council and the Santa Barbara Botanic Garden. We have a reimbursement program for implementing pollinator habitat on ag land. That's PHP, and we have Camilla from Community Environmental Council here today, so she can raise her hand in the back and chat with you guys about that opportunity. Additionally, we have a grazing lands conservation program, and that is in partnership with our fellow RCDs that are in the Central Coast. And so we have a rangeland planner, a grant, he's in the back, and he is offering free technical assistance, like consultations. He's your go-to guy. We also are offering rangeland grazing management plans, and we're doing rancher workshops and networking events. So really trying to increase our rancher and grazing opportunities. Christina?
Hello, my name is Christina. Also work on the soil and climate team. So we have 3 other grants that are currently closed for new applications, but farmers in this county and others are working on them. And so I just wanted to mention them in case funding like this comes up again in the future, and to acknowledge the great work that, the farmers and ranchers are doing in this county. So the first one's the Organic Transition Pilot Program, or OTP, and it's basically funding the transition of farmers to organic agriculture. We're also providing technical assistance in this transition because it is a daunting transition, but we are building up our resources in that capacity. We also have the Healthy Soils Program. These are both CDFA programs, and the Healthy Soils Program helps farmers and ranchers implement healthy soils practices on their farms, which may look like wood chip mulch application or planting a hedgerow or windrow, applying compost, and many other practices. But we're currently working with farmers on that in a 3-year grant period. And the last one that's also currently closed for new applications is the State Water Efficiency and Enhancement Program, or SWEEP. And this is a very competitive grant, but it allows farmers to help reduce their water usage and also reduce their greenhouse gas emissions through implementing various irrigation upgrades, such as soil moisture sensors or installing a VFD to your well. And so these applications are currently closed, but maybe we'll have that funding in the future. And just, thanks to everyone who's working really hard on these grants to implement them on your farms. And feel free to reach out to any of us at our table if you're interested in any of them, and we can get you in the application. So pass it off to our non-specifically agricultural coworkers who work in partnership with farmers.
Hello, I'm Lauren Zaragoza, and I also work at the Ventura County Resource Conservation District. We're here to share with you our 2 watershed councils. They are collaborative forums, and the one that we're in currently is the Santa Clara River Watershed Committee. And then our neighboring watersheds are also Cayugas Creek, and the council that I'm also the coordinator for is the Ventura River Watershed Council. And these are primarily collaborative forums. They bring together representatives from water agencies, local cities, and environmental nonprofits and agriculture representatives. And they're a great place for convening, information sharing, project updates. I encourage you, if you're not already, to sign up for our newsletter. And I present agendas via this newsletter, and so you can see if there are projects, updates, anything pertinent that is related to our agriculture growing community. It's a great place to network and get more information. For the Santa Clara River Watershed Committee, we just finalized a charter and we have a new leadership kind of structure for it. And it does have spaces for agriculture representatives on a larger scale and on a smaller scale to join and participate in our leadership structure. We also have the Farm Bureau joining us at all of our meetings. And for the Ventura River Watershed Council, we just participated in a Department of Water Resources Climate Resiliency Grant. And this was a planning grant, but we basically came up with 8 primary goals that are watershed wide, and it's specific to the Ventura River, but I think that these goals are representative of our whole community. But I want to flag specifically Goal 6. It is that agriculture practices are adapted to the effects of climate change and sustain a thriving local economy and ag-based livelihood. So I want to bring this up because we are all working in the environmental sphere, and Ventura County has a close connection and relationship with our agriculture community, and we want to support that moving forward, especially in watershed-wide planning efforts. So I encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. And I'm also a representative for our Ventura County Prescribed Burn Association. So we help landowners in Ventura County manage their land with the use of prescribed fire. This is primarily to reduce dead and down woody debris, increase fire safety, maybe improve some of the local ecology and habitat. And I want to flag this because many of you may participate in agriculture burns already, but if you have been impacted by fires, landscape level fires in the last couple of years, you might have a ton of dead debris on the land, and our staff can help coordinate with looking for funding to bring crews in to clear some of that. We'll build piles, we'll work with the Air Pollution Control District to have a smoke management plan, and we have connections with Ventura County Fire, the state certified burn boss, all of these things to make it a safe and productive experience with managing fuel loads on your land. And that being said, come check out our resources, and thank you for having me here.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Ray. I work on our habitat restoration team at the RCD, and a couple of things that I wanted to bring to your attention today are 2 of the programs that we and my team work on for improving the habitat in this county. So one of them being arundo and invasive species removal within both the Ventura River watershed and the Santa Clara River watershed. The RCD holds permits for both watersheds to be able to comply with regulatory agencies to remove arundo and invasive species, and we are always looking for additional landowners who want to remove those species off of their land if they are along the river. There's many benefits to removing arundo. It helps with fire risk, just ecological benefits with the river and the species that live in those areas, and then also with watershed health and that sort of stuff. So if you are interested or know people who live along either of the rivers and want to remove arundo from your land, I encourage you to come speak to me about the removal process and how that can look moving forward as we're trying to get more landowners engaged to eradicate arundo and other invasive species in our watersheds. And the other one is called our Harmony program. We work to implement pollinator habitat throughout the county for monarchs specifically, but also just pollinators in general, to increase that habitat for nectar sources and milkweed and all that sort of good stuff that they need to survive and get through their migration, and also just for ecological benefits. So if you are in the PHP program or are, interested in doing that, I love to talk native plants and that sort of stuff. So please, again, come up to our table and kind of learn more about the restoration work happening in Ventura County. And with that, I think that concludes our presentations. I'll pass it to Emily.
Yes, thank you team for presenting. Yeah, come talk to us at the table. We also have new faces. We have several new ag hires coming in the next month, so you'll get to meet even more of us to help more of you. And so we'll take questions from online and in the audience. What's considered a small farmer? Well, with our grant programs, I'd say the vast majority of them don't have a restriction on size of operation. So we're working with farmers as small as like a half acre. It's more on with grant programs, there might be a requirement for if they're like a commercial farmer, if they're selling or not. For CUSP, that is, you can be a super small farmer for that one. Oh, sorry. I should reiterate the question out loud. The question was for the CUSP program, the California Underserved and Small Producer Program, what is like the eligibility and the size of the operation? So that one, it's a financial eligibility. So if you're under, I don't have it off the top of my head. You're under, thank you. If you're under 400,000 gross annual income.
Yeah, so the eligibility criteria for the CUSP Extreme Weather Relief Program is for operations that have grossed less than $400,000 in annual income during the year where you felt the impacts of the extreme weather event. So let's say there was a wildfire in 2024 and the impacts were felt in 2025 with respects to cost and, crop loss, for example. That's the year that we'll look at. So it's just financial. It's not related to acreage.
Yeah, that grant is one of the few that has like a financial cap, and that's just because the purpose is to support the smaller to medium size operations, whereas the other ones we don't have the financial cap on. So the funders wanted as many people to be eligible as possible, presuming that you're a producer.
Yeah, it's actually for you, Alex. Can you flip back one slide? So the CAPGP, is that to support INMP plans? No.
Yeah, so the goal of CAPG is more so to develop a plan for your farm where you can sequester that atmospheric carbon dioxide, not necessarily comply with the track 2 requirements for like MPPs and stuff for VCALG. Yeah. That the plan you'd be looking for more is the AMP grant. That grant provides the plans for farmers for those who do choose the track 2 compliance routes. Yeah, AMP is the one where you would want to apply for. Yeah.
Can you put that slide back up of his programs?
Right. We were just having some clicker issues.
So AMP says TMDL help with track 2, but the bottom one looked like, I know it's carbon farm plan, but it's nutrient management. So I thought, well, maybe there's nitrogen planning under nutrient management.
No. That'd be more so AMP, not CAPG. Yeah.
If you don't have further questions right now, please come up and ask us your individual questions at our table. Moving on to the next bit. So because we're here to address community resource needs, it's extremely important for us to get feedback on what your priorities are. So that way we can pivot to meet them, not just us, but our partner organizations. So we have a short resource concerns survey coming to you. There's in person now and as well as a poll on Zoom. Additionally, we want to get feedback on the specific event. So that way we can improve it for next year. And that on Zoom, the event survey is combined in the poll. And then in person, there's a separate event specific kind of feedback. Thank you all so much for helping us help you. Thank you, Zoom participants, for filling out the poll before you leave the webinar. And thank you to the in-person attendees for filling out the survey. And we have baskets located around the room and before you exit, if you could place the surveys in the basket before you leave. When you're done with your surveys, feel free to enjoy our tabling and networking session. We'll make an announcement when lunch is ready.
If you're online, the Zoom will stay open so you can complete that survey. It'll stay open for another 15 minutes or so.
For attendees, if you require Spanish translation,